Welcome, everybody. You're listening to Structure Talk, a Structure Tech presentation. My name is Bill Ulrich, alongside Tessa Murray and Reuben Saltzman. As always, your three-legged stool coming to you from the Northland, talking all things houses, home inspections, and anything else that's rattling around in our brains. Welcome to today's episode. Maybe you heard Reuben stepping all over me at the beginning. Maybe you didn't.
I wanted to say the intro with you, but you have none of that. You made us re-record it.
Yes.
Maybe you could play it again at the end of the show.
Sure.
A bloopers reel.
Yes. So it was fantastic. I started talking, and then Reuben started talking, and we were out of step. So I was like, whoa, wait. Well,
Bill would not roll with it.
I wasn't having it. It's a Thursday, and I haven't had enough coffee. So
sorry, Bill. I'll never do that again.
Okay. Glad we've got that covered. Well, on today's episode, we wanted to talk a bit about new construction inspections, home inspections that happen before you move into the house, way before drywall gets put up, or maybe right before you move in, or maybe it's 10, 11 months after you've been living there. And each of these inspections have their own name. And I guess they all are designed to do the same thing, which is figure out if there are potentially any problems that you would want to know about as an owner. But they are much different than your standard home inspection. So we thought it'd be a good idea to have a conversation about why. And just to give some context, recently somebody in our office is building a new house, and they were able to set up what's called a pre-drywall inspection. And what, Reuben, 56 of the 75 inspectors from Structure Tech came out and did a mock inspection?
Yeah, someday we'll have that many. But we had about 2/3 of our team out there. It was a good showing.
And this was really a training, wasn't it?
That's what it was. Yeah. We were there for a couple hours. Builder let us all go in there and use this house in progress as a sample. And we went through, and, most of the inspectors on our team do not do pre-drywall inspections. And just to define what a pre-drywall inspection is, as the name implies, it's an inspection that happens before the drywall goes up. Ideally, it'll happen right before the drywall gets put up. So you'll probably have insulation in the walls. You may or may not have insulation in the attic, but definitely before all the walls get covered.
It's a completely different animal because you need to know framing, and you need to know the codes, and ideally how to look at blueprints too, right? Yeah,
there's a lot to it. And being a home inspector, you're looking at a completely different list of stuff. I mean, you'd think that it should all just transfer, but it really doesn't. It is a completely different animal. You need to know the newest stuff. I mean, I was sitting there looking at a few details, kind of scratching my head going, why did they do this? I know there's a reason for it, but I don't understand. I mean, for instance, there was one heat run where they brought it up through the middle of the wall by the stairway, and then the heat register was going to be right by the stairway. But instead of making a couple of big holes in the I-joists, and you're not supposed to make holes right near a bearing point, I get that, but they brought this duct back into the middle of the room about 6-7 feet, and then they made a turn. They went through a couple of joists, and then they went back to the stairway. So they got this huge U in the duct. And I know there's a reason for it because I've seen it done before. And I think at one point I had someone explain it to me, and I've since forgotten why. But it's these little things like, why is this happening? And unless you're familiar with new construction, you do a lot of these pre-drywall inspections, it escapes you. It's a different animal. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. And that's why only a small portion of the team does them.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right.
In that situation that you just described, you see this odd-looking HVAC run. How do you comment on it? Are you asking a question and getting clarification? Is that okay? Or do you put it in and say, get clarification if that's okay? Or how do you report?
Well, in this case, it was definitely not a defect. It was more just a head scratcher, like, why the heck did they do this? But there's other things where, I mean, it's black and white. It's wrong. Some of the things that we saw were there was a lot of damaged weather wrap, water resistant barrier that we will find on every new construction home. And that's something that it's kind of assumed that the builder is going to take care of it right before the siding goes on. The siders are going to have tape with them. They're going to fix all this stuff. That's just standard stuff. But that we found some damaged trim on the overhead garage door opening. We found probably one of the biggest things we found. This is a controversial one, and you guys will remember this happened to somebody else on our team where they had put the stairway in and the risers were not the right heights.
Yeah.
On a stairway, you can't have risers that vary more than 3/8 of an inch. That's the maximum difference you can have on any entire stairway. So at this house, we found there was about maybe a half inch or even 7/16 inch difference in riser heights. And we had to figure out what type of flooring was going in because that's going to affect the final rise of everything. And once we learned what type of flooring was going in, we realized, okay, this is going to be an even bigger gap once they're all done. And that's kind of a big deal. I mean, we had one inspector on our team. The builder ended up having to come back out when the house was completely finished, had to tear the whole stairway out and redo it. Huge inconvenience for everybody involved, for the builder, for the person on our team who was building this house, for everybody. And this is the stuff we're trying to avoid.
A lot of times, too, I've done a handful of these. It's been a while, obviously, but it seems like clearances for exhaust and intake terminals for combustion appliances or air-to-air exchangers can be a challenge, too, a lot of the times. And we found a lot of problems with deck construction as well, right? So there's just a lot of things that you have to really look closely at, and you have to be familiar and comfortable with current building code.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one example, there was another thing we found was we saw where the drain was for the bathtub, and there's a certain distance that you need to have for all of the vents. Like if you have a trap here, you can't, if it's a 2-inch pipe, you can't have more than 5 feet of run on that drain before you've got a vent. And in this case, it was about a 8-foot run before they had a vent. And so our question is, what's going on here? Why is this 8 feet? Was there a change in the code? We pulled out the code book during the inspection. Nope, it still says 5 feet. So then in this case, it was really just more of a question. Go back to the builder and ask him, why is this an 8-foot run when the code says 5? And maybe there's some new exception that I don't know about. But if not, well, it's wrong.
And that was on a bathtub?
That's on a bathtub. That's right.
So how do you think most builders handle a home inspection company like us coming in to do these inspections? Do we get pushback a lot of the times?
It depends. I think a lot of it depends on the job supervisor. Some of them are very accommodating and they want to build the best house possible for their clients, and they welcome this. We have had builders, a lot of builders will refer us. They'll say, call Structure Tech, because it's not going to be this little nitpicky, oh, there's a scratch here, scratch there. We're reporting real stuff, and we're not making stuff up. We're not making their life miserable by making things up, basically. Mm-hmm. But there's other builders who are not at all accepting of this. I remember there was an inspection I was at where this was not a pre-drywall. It was a new construction inspection. The house was mostly done. It was running behind schedule, and the buyer's realtor was there along with the job supervisor. The job supervisor was a dink. I mean, he was mean, he was abrasive, and the agent was talking about a few of the things that I had found and talking about trying to get resolution. And the job supervisor, it got to a point where he goes, I'm just trying to do my job. And if you want to go outside and settle this like a man, let's go. We can take this outside. I mean, he's threatening the agent. Like he wants to fight him because he's trying to get a few of these things fixed. So Tessa, to use your favorite phrase, it depends.
It depends.
It depends.
Yeah, I would just think that having an inspector come in to look at all of these details would put a lot of builders kind of make them anxious, I would think,
Sure. And if we're in there reporting a bunch of stuff that's inaccurate, that's just wrong, like, hey, this meets code, there's no problem, and we're writing it up. If I were a builder, I'd be really annoyed by that.
Maybe even embarrassed. Yeah, maybe even embarrassed too. It's like, now your client loses faith in you as a builder, how did this get missed? Or how did you make this mistake,
Yeah. That's why it's important to be completely accurate with these inspections, or you lose all credibility.
Well, and for people listening too, I think it's important to know if you are either a homeowner or a home buyer considering building a house, or B, a home inspector out there, there is a need and there's a market for these pre-drywall inspections.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what's interesting? I haven't shared this with the team yet. I talked to a couple people, but I was at an IEB conference down in Texas, and I was having dinner with a couple of other inspectors, and they said for these pre-drywall inspections, they're spending like 4 to 6 hours on every one. I know.
What?
Tessa's jaw just hit the floor. And they're taking their standard home inspection fee, and they tack on somewhere between $150 and $400, and that's what they're charging for pre-drywall. They're taking the blueprints and they're going around and verifying everything on the blueprints to what they actually have. I mean, this is almost a full day that they're spending on this. And I can't imagine that. We don't do anything like that. I don't know of any home inspector in Minnesota who does, but I got really curious about this, and I ended up talking to someone who's doing this type of training for it, and it's this company down out of Florida. Well, I'll say who it is. It's Inspectigator. Good guys. Mm-hmm. John Bolton, if you know him, and he said they've got one person on their team who does this training, and it's not even John. He's not the one who does it, and that one person is the only person at their company who does pre-drywall inspections. Their whole company, they got one person who does them. So I thought that was pretty fascinating, and it really underscores how specialized of an inspection this is. We'll never get to a point where we got our whole team doing them.
Definitely not. And actually, one thing comes to mind too, and I think we've talked about this on our podcast before, where we've had situations where we've challenged inspectors from the city on new construction inspections and findings, right? We talked about the inspection where one of our inspectors called out some issues with a deck and it shut down.
On the podcast?
Oh my goodness. No, we haven't. And I don't remember the whole story. Do you, Tess?
Well, yeah, actually, enough to share it, I think. Shout out to Ed. Ed was doing an inspection on this new construction house and called out these issues with the deck and the attachment to the house. And the builder came back and said, hey, this house has already been inspected by the city and it's been approved and everything. Didn't we push back on that? And then they ended up having the city inspector come back out, and they found that sure enough, they had missed this problem. And so it opened up an investigation of all the other houses in this new development that had decks, and they found the same problem, and they ended up shutting down the builder temporarily, I think, and putting the city inspector on leave.
Yes. That's what happened, Tess. It's wild.
So
what was the attachment issue?
Oh, I can't remember the specifics on it, but a pretty big deal, obviously.
Yeah, it wasn't just the attachment issue. There was a lot of stuff wrong with this deck. I mean, when I first heard the story, I kind of thought, I heard it in progress, and I kind of thought, what kind of mess are we getting ourselves into? If the city's already signed off on this, why are we? What's going on? How bad is this? And then I looked at the photos and went, oh, yeah, that's really wrong. How in the world could a city be signing off on this? And yeah, it was a big deal.
So let's be clear. What inspection was that? Was that this pre-drywall you're referring to, or is this the inspection right before they move in the house and close on the property? Or it was that one. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. And not the what we call 11 month warranty inspection.
No, it wasn't one of those. And I'll say for a pre-drywall inspection, I don't think I've ever done a pre-drywall inspection where the deck was up. The deck comes afterward.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But before we move off from the pre-drywalls, because I think we touched on that pretty well, but the idea of getting blueprints and then understanding what you're looking at, and then being able to understand both the structural blueprints, the electrical blueprints, the mechanical blueprints. I mean, that's a pretty high bar to be going through all that documentation and confirming it's where it should be and how it should be.
Agreed. And if we ever got to that point, we would certainly charge accordingly.
It's above our pay grade.
Yeah. Today.
For now.
Talk to me in a couple of months. We'll see where we're at. I know we've got some people who are certainly qualified to do it, but that's not what we're doing today. Our pre-drywall inspections typically take more like about 90 minutes to 2 hours, something like that.
All right. Now, moving on to this the number 2 was where Ed was involved on this deck attachment issue. What is this? It's the exact same home inspection as we do normally, right? But how is it?
It's really similar, except you're not finding things that are at the end of their life or things that have wear and tear. Really, you're looking for installation issues. You need to be a little bit more familiar with the building code, because if you call something out as being incorrect, you're probably going to get, well, I shouldn't say probably. Sometimes you get kickback from a builder, just as Ed did. And then it's up to you to defend that. And they'll say, well, where in the code does it say this? And this is a very controversial topic, because there's a lot of home inspectors in different parts of the country where, I mean, they adamant, like fist on the table. A home inspector should never use the word code. You don't even understand what our job is if you're mentioning code. But I will argue just as hard the other way. If you're doing new construction, you better know what the building codes are. You better know how to open up a code book and show where it says it ought to be done. Well, it must be done this way. Shall be done.
Shall be. Yeah. Okay, so typically in this inspection, what are the top three things you pick off on a regular basis?
Tessa?
What comes to mind is improper installation of siding. A lot of the times, either LP or James Hardy, improper clearances above windows or doors, or missing flashing details, or mounting blocks, or or cut edges that aren't painted.
Yep.
That sort of thing.
Improper spacing. Having the joints too close to each other. Yep. Yeah. Find a lot of siding errors. How about attics?
Yes.
Insufficient insulation.
Yes.
I thought you were going to go right there.
I know. How did I not? Somehow it slipped my mind. No, yeah, definitely attics and missing insulation or inadequate levels of insulation. Very common.
Yep.
Are plumbing issues a thing in new construction? I mean, do things that shouldn't leak?
Not a lot. I've found my share of them. I mean, I found a leaking dishwasher that went through the house, went down into the basement the first time we ran it. I found a leaking master bathroom bathtub. I once found a leaking fitting where they had soldered a fitting and they didn't get it right. And it was leaking onto the ceiling below, and they had just done it. It hadn't wrecked the ceiling yet, but my infrared camera picked it up. And they were able to fix it before it wrecked the ceiling. I mean, so yeah, we've definitely found plumbing leaks. Oh, there was another one. We talked about it a few episodes ago where my dad and I were doing it together, and they had messed up the drain on the master bathroom shower, and it got the whole ceiling wet in the basement.
Yeah, so, that's a disaster.
Yeah, we find plumbing issues for sure.
Every once in a while. I was going to say another one is like improper installation, like I mentioned before, of like furnace intake exhaust and air-to-air exchanger intake exhaust, or combustion makeup air intakes, and exhaust being next to an intake, and that whole situation being incorrect. Or even a lot of times we'll find furnaces that they're brand new, but they've been installed and they've run the heat maybe while they're doing the sheetrock and sanding and mudding, and so the entire furnace is caked in drywall dust. That's a common issue we see.
Yeah. And then we do a temporize check, which we've talked about on the podcast, measuring the air coming in versus the air going out. Furnace manufacturer has a very specific spec saying what that can be. And then we find that the temporize is too high. Why is it too high? Well, if you got that situation like you just described, Tess, where the inside is just all caked with drywall dust, you got these tiny little fins. If those are all clogged up, that will cause an improper temperature rise. And it means the furnace is going to be running way hotter than it should, and it's going to dramatically shorten the life of the furnace. Yeah.
Yep. So
and the list goes on.
Yeah. It's a good idea to get one of these inspections, even if you're buying a new house. We find all sorts of problems.
Yeah. Nobody ever has it and then says, gee, that was a waste of money.
And same thing goes for these 10-month, 11-month warranty inspections. Usually we don't do an inspection for someone that's, moving into this new house and then do it again 10 months later. Usually not much has changed. No big discoveries will occur. People usually do one or the other. But to that point, all these things that we find, not all of these new construction inspections are created equal or are apples to apples. right?
No. Oh my goodness, Tess, I know where you're going with this. We do 11-month warranty inspections, and we've had some of our potential clients recently saying, hey, I'm just price shopping. I need an 11-month warranty inspection, and your price is this, but I found somebody else who's doing it for almost half the price you guys are. And we say, well, we do all this stuff. And then we've had a few clients say, well, they specifically mentioned you and they said they do the exact same inspection that Structure Tech does, but they're just not gouging us on price. And it burns me a little bit, but how can I prove that they're not? I mean, maybe they are. And I wrestled with this for a while, and we ended up secret shopping this other company where we had done a pre-drywall inspection on this house, and it was about a couple of weeks later, I arranged for one of our competitors to do a pre-drywall inspection on the same house. And because I just wanted to see what are they doing, because if they're charging half the price and they're doing the exact same thing that we're doing, then we need to hang up our hat and quit doing these inspections because we can't afford to do them for half the price. It takes way too much time to check all this stuff, to write the report. I mean, there's no way. And if that's really the case, we're just going to hang up our hat and we'll be done doing 11-month warranty inspections, and we'll let somebody else do it for half the price. So I was curious, what are you getting?
Was this a pre-drywall? Sorry to interrupt you. You said pre-drywall inspection.
Yeah, I was going to clarify.
Or was this a?
Oh gosh, I'm so confusing. Say 11-month warranty. Sorry.
Okay, thought that's what you meant. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you for clarifying that. So we had another company do an 11-month warranty inspection a couple of weeks after we had done ours. Our inspector was not planning on being secret shopped. We had no idea that we were even going to do this at the time. So he did it blind. He just did his normal inspection. And the other company didn't know that any of this was going on. So I think it's a fair comparison. It's apples to apples. Neither one knew that there was anything, I don't know.
Could be compared to their inspection.
Nobody knew anything was going to be compared. And when we were all done, I looked at our list and there was a lot of stuff on there. I mean, there was plumbing defects, there was framing stuff, siding stuff, HVAC. I mean, there's a good list of stuff for the builder to come back and take care of. And then I looked at the other report, and it was basically all pictures of blue tape that the inspector put on the walls, noting scuffs and scratches and nail pops. It was all cosmetic. And I mean, I could teach my daughter, Lucy, she's 11. I could teach her to look for this in about an hour and put blue tape on the walls and take pictures of it. Anybody could do that. So that's what this other company was offering. And none of the stuff that we had put in our report was in there. I mean, we had put one comment. We said there's a handful of scuffs and scratches and nail pops, and you'll want to bring these up to the builder. And we took a few photos of them, but we're not there to document the stuff that any homeowner can see with their own eyes. Like, you don't need to pay us for that. But that's what this other inspection was. It was pretty much nothing but that. So I haven't shared this information with anybody up until right now. And I feel a little bit weird even sharing this because I'm not trying to bust any other competitors out. I want to be a good competitor, a good colleague. So I'm not sure what to do with this yet, whether I call the owner and we have a chat about this. Like, what are you really doing? I don't know. What do I do, Tess? What do I do, Bill?
I think, if anything, it's just good information for consumers out there to know that it's the same thing we tell people about, like with a furnace tune-up. You call an HVAC company, say, I want my furnace tune-up. They come out, they charge you $100 and they do a furnace tune-up. You have no idea what they actually did compared to company B who charged you $250. Did they look at the same things? Was it a 50-point check, a 10-point check? Did they, and the same thing goes for these new construction inspections or these 11-month warranty inspections, is that you really need to be savvy as a consumer to know what it is your inspector is looking at and what you can expect from that inspection.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I think at a minimum, you need to get the information that the client wants to them, right? Like, if the contractor is supposed to fix these nail pops and that sort of stuff, well, then fine. If you highlight them, I don't have a problem with that. But if that's all you do, that's different than doing like a full home inspection.
And for real estate agents to know too, not just homeowners and buyers and people building houses, like for real estate agents to realize that there's a difference too, across different inspection companies.
Yeah.
Well, agents aren't usually involved in these warranty inspections, are they?
I don't think so. But I think this would probably translate to the full home inspection. I got the feeling that if that's this person's version of an 11-month warranty inspection, that's probably their version of a new construction inspection. It's probably the same thing. But I don't know. We haven't secret shopped that one, and I'm surely not going to. I mean, I'm not trying to assassinate anybody here. Just trying to make people a little bit better. And make sure people are our clients. I mean, if they're calling us up and saying, hey, this company said they do the exact same thing you do. Well, now I know they don't. And at least we have a rebuttal for when we hear that.
I tend to think the market will sort these kinds of things out eventually.
You get what you pay for.
You get
generally.
what you pay for. Yes.
Yeah.
If price is the metric that everybody uses, 3X versus 1, you probably get a little more with 3X. But
hopefully
you have to do your homework. I mean, that's the bottom line. Do your homework and do your research and work with reputable companies and work with reputable people. It's up to the consumer to do their homework. That's the way I see it. So you go out there and do your best job every single day and win over people. Do a good job.
But I'll make it real easy for anybody in the Minnesota market. Here, look, I did the research for you. Hire us. Or Structure Tech.
Thanks, Reuben. You cut right to the chase there. So.
I guess it is our podcast. We can.
It's
say
our
that.
podcast.
Okay.
No, okay. Sorry.
Awkward pause. Okay, moving on. All right. So the 3 inspections, just kind of recapping. You've got before any of the finished materials go up, you get in there and you poke and push and prod and visualize, and then the next one is right before they move in. You do what you normally do. And why is it called a warranty inspection? What's the deal with that language?
I don't have the statute in front of me, but it is a Minnesota statute that there is a warranty from the builder. And the idea is if you're going to get stuff addressed within the first year, you want to know about it. So It's the builder covers all of the stuff that we're coming up with under their warranty. So
what you're saying is if you're going to bring something up and start a conversation about that, you should do it at this mark on the calendar so that everybody's put on notice that you brought it
That's
up
right.
in the right time frame.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Okay. Well, anything else you want to throw on the old early in the home life inspection process?
Probably threw on more than I should have. I think that's enough.
Yeah. You get wound up about these things, Reuben.
I do.
It matters to you.
Yeah.
We're passionate.
You're passionate.
It's who we are. It's what we do.
I'm passionate sometimes too. Like Sunday afternoons when Green Bay's getting throttled, I get a little upset. But anyway, no, just kidding. I digress. Let's put a wrap on this because now we're just fumbling around with our words. You've been listening to Structure Talk. Hey, Reuben, you want to do this together? You've been listening to
Structure Talk, a Structure Tech presentation. My name is
Bill Ulrich.
Bill, your timing, let's start over. Your timing is way off. You're changing your timing because I'm on here.
Okay, I'm going to go faster.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. You've been listening to Structure Talk,
a
Structure Tech presentation. My name is Bill Ulrich alongside Tessa Murray and Reuben Saltzman. Thanks for listening. Hopefully you won't catch us next time because that was just so bad. But thank you for listening. We appreciate it.
We appreciate it. Take care.
Larry's going to have to fix all this nonsense towards the end. Sorry. Welcome, everyone. You're listening to Structure Talk, a Structure Tech
presentation.
What are you doing?
Come on, I wanted to say it with you.
Oh. Hi, everybody. Bill here again with Structure Talk. We really want to thank you for listening to this podcast. It's been a ton of fun for us to put this presentation together. And if you could, we would love it if you would go to any of the podcast platforms where you find Structure Talk and leave us a rating and subscribe to the show. You can also subscribe to our blog at structuretech.com. And of course, you can listen to this show on the internet at structuretalk.com. Thanks again for listening. We appreciate the support. And if you have any suggestions for show topics, please email them to podcast@structuretech.com. Thanks for listening.